Keep moving, old man. This ain't your stop! The bus driver's voice sliced through the humid morning air, sharp and dismissive as the doors hissed shut. The words stung like a slap, echoing in the cramped space of the city bus stop, where 72-year-old Vietnam veteran Samuel Sam Carter stood, his weathered hand still raised, clutching a faded leather wallet with his bus pass inside. The bus roared away, its exhaust curling like a mocking sneer, leaving Sam alone on the cracked sidewalk of Jefferson Avenue, a busy artery of the city lined with pawnshops, diners, and flickering neon signs. The morning sun beat down, glinting off Sam's silver hair and the tarnished dog tag hanging from his neck, a memento of a war fought decades ago. Around him, the buzz of passing cars and distant sirens filled the air, but the silence of rejection hung heavier. Sam blinked, his hazel eyes narrowing as the driver's words sank in. His chest tightened, not from the heart condition he'd been managing since Nam, but from the familiar sting of being dismissed, overlooked, erased. The stop was his, marked clearly on the schedule taped to the pole beside him. He'd been riding this route for years to get to the VA hospital for his checkups. Today, though, the driver, a young man with a shaved head and a scowl, hadn't even slowed down. Sam's gaze dropped to the dog tag, his thumb brushing over the engraved name of his late platoon mate, Jimmy, who'd never made it home. "You'd laugh at this nonsense, wouldn't you?" he muttered, his voice low and gravelly, tinged with the southern drawl of his Georgia roots. The scene felt like a betrayal. Just minutes earlier, Sam had been the hero of the moment. A young mother struggling with a stroller and a crying toddler had nearly dropped her grocery bags as she wrestled with the bus stop's broken bench. Sam, despite the ache in his knees, had knelt down, steadying the stroller with one hand and gathering the scattered cans of soup with the other. "You got this, ma'am," he'd said with a warm smile, his eyes crinkling. "Takes a village, right?" The woman, flustered but grateful, had thanked him profusely, her toddler giggling as Sam made a playful face. A few bystanders nodded approvingly, one even clapping Sam on the shoulder. For a fleeting moment, Sam felt seen, respected, like the man who'd once carried wounded soldiers through a jungle under fire. Now that warmth was gone, replaced by the cold reality of the driver's sneer. Sam's shoulders sagged, but only for a second. He straightened, his jaw tightening. He'd faced worse, far worse than a rude driver. Still, the injustice gnawed at him. Why had the driver skipped the stop? Was it the sight of Sam's worn jacket patched at the elbows? The cane he leaned on lightly? Or was it something deeper, a snap judgment about an old veteran who didn't fit the city's fast-paced rhythm? Sam's mind raced, replaying the driver's glance, brief but loaded with contempt. It wasn't just a missed stop. It was a dismissal of everything Sam had fought for, everything he was. The tension escalated as a small crowd began to gather, drawn by the spectacle of the bus speeding off. A teenage girl in a hoodie, earbuds dangling, filmed the scene on her phone, her brows furrowed. "That's messed up," she muttered, loud enough for Sam to hear. An older woman, clutching a reusable grocery bag, shook her head. "They treat folks like garbage these days," she said, her voice laced with indignation. Their words were a faint comfort, but they didn't erase the humiliation burning in Sam's chest. He wanted to shout, to demand answers, but his throat felt tight, the weight of years of silent endurance pressing down. Then a new sound cut through the murmurs, a low, angry rumble. Sam turned, squinting against the sun, as a sleek black SUV screeched to a halt at the curb. The tinted window rolled down, revealing a man in a crisp suit, his face hard and unreadable. "Carter!" he barked, stepping out. "You causing trouble again?" The crowd hushed, eyes darting between Sam and the man, whose city badge glinted ominously on his lapel. Sam's heart sank. He recognized the man. Councilman Derek Holt, a local official known for his iron grip on city services. Holt's presence spelled trouble, and Sam's gut told him this was no coincidence. The air grew thick with anticipation. Sam gripped his cane tighter, his knuckles whitening. He didn't know why Holt was here or how he knew his name, but the councilman's cold stare felt like a predator sizing up prey. The crowd shifted, some stepping back, others leaning in, phones still recording. The teenage girl's voice broke the silence, bold and defiant. "He didn't do nothing wrong!" Her words hung in the air, a spark in the powder keg of the moment. Sam's mind flashed to Jimmy's dog tag, to the promise he'd made to never back down from what was right. He took a shaky breath, his voice steady despite the tremor in his hands. "I just wanted to get to my appointment, sir," he said, locking eyes with Holt. "Ain't no trouble in that." The councilman's lips curled into a thin smile, but before he could respond, the distant wail of a siren grew louder, converging on Jefferson Avenue. Something was coming. Something big. "We've only just begun this story, but trust me, it's about to get even more intense. Stick around to find out what happens when Sam faces an even greater injustice." The siren's wail crescendoed, slicing through the thick tension on Jefferson Avenue. Samuel Sam Carter stood rooted to the sidewalk, his cane a steady anchor as Councilman Derek Holt's cold gaze bored into him. The black SUV's engine idled ominously, its low hum blending with the rustle of the growing crowd. The air smelled of asphalt and exhaust, the late morning heat pressing against Sam's skin like a heavy blanket. His dog tag, Jimmy's dog tag, felt warm against his chest, a quiet reminder of battles fought and promises kept. But this moment, surrounded by murmuring strangers and Holt's accusing stare, felt like a new kind of war. Holt stepped closer, his polished shoes clicking on the pavement. "You're holding up my day, Carter," he said, his voice smooth but laced with venom. "Causing a scene, stirring up trouble? Veterans like you always think you're owed something." The words landed like a punch and Sam's breath caught. Owed something? He'd spent years dodging bullets in Vietnam, carrying men to safety, only to come home to a country that often looked the other way. Now this suit with a badge was twisting his life service into an accusation. Sam's jaw clenched, his hazel eyes flickering with a mix of hurt and defiance. The crowd stirred, their murmurs growing sharper. The teenage girl with the hoodie, still filming, stepped forward, her voice cracking with indignation. "He didn't cause nothing. That driver skipped his stop." A few others nodded, their faces tight with frustration, but Holt barely glanced at them. Instead, he raised a hand, silencing the crowd like a conductor halting an orchestra. "This man," he said, pointing at Sam, "is a known agitator. Always complaining, always making demands." Sam's heart thudded. Known agitator? He'd never met Holt before today. The lie was so blatant it burned, but the councilman's confidence made it sound like gospel. Before Sam could respond, a police cruiser screeched to a stop beside the SUV, its red and blue lights flashing. Two officers stepped out, their hands resting on their belts. The taller one, a broad-shouldered man with a buzz cut, eyed Sam warily. "What's the problem here, Councilman?" he asked, his tone deferential. Holt smirked. "Mr. Carter here's causing a public disturbance. Might need to take him in for questioning." The words hit Sam like a freight train. Questioning? For standing at a bus stop? His knees buckled slightly, but he leaned harder on his cane, refusing to show weakness. The crowd erupted in protest. The older woman with the grocery bag shouted, "That's outrageous. He's just an old man trying to get to the hospital." A young man in a construction vest joined in, his voice booming. "Y'all can't do this!" But the officers moved closer, their expressions unyielding. Sam's mind raced, a flood of memories crashing over him. Jungle mud, gunfire, the weight of a wounded soldier on his back. He'd faced death without flinching, but this? This was a different kind of fear, a gnawing shame that made his chest ache. He glanced at the dog tag, his thumb brushing over Jimmy's name. "Stay strong, brother," he whispered, barely audible. The teenage girl pushed through the crowd, her phone still raised. "I got it all on video!" she yelled, her voice trembling but fierce. "The driver, the stop, everything." Holt's smirk faltered for a split second, but he recovered quickly, turning to the officers. "Make sure she hands over that phone," he said coolly. The taller officer nodded, stepping toward the girl who backed away, clutching her phone like a lifeline. The crowd surged forward, their voices a chaotic chorus of outrage. Someone shouted, "This ain't right." Another cried, "Leave her alone!" The air crackled with tension, a powder keg ready to ignite. Sam's heart pounded, his breath shallow. He wanted to speak, to defend himself, but the weight of Holt's accusations pressed down like a physical force. His mind flickered to his daughter Lena, who lived across town. She'd always told him, "Dad, you're a hero. Don't let nobody tell you different." But standing here, accused and outnumbered, he felt anything but heroic. The humiliation was suffocating, a reminder of every time he'd been dismissed, at the VA, at the grocery store, even at the community center where he volunteered. Each slight had chipped away at him, but this was a sledgehammer. Then, a new sound broke through the chaos, a sharp, rhythmic clacking like boots on pavement. Sam turned, his eyes widening as a figure emerged from the crowd. She was tall, with gray-streaked hair pulled into a tight bun, her navy blazer adorned with a city council pin. Her face was stern, her eyes scanning the scene with an intensity that silenced the crowd. "What in God's name is going on here?" she demanded, her voice cutting through the noise like a blade. The officers froze, and even Holt's posture stiffened. Sam didn't know her, but the authority in her presence was undeniable. The woman's gaze landed on Sam, softening slightly as she took in his weathered face, the cane, the dog tag glinting in the sun. "You," she said, pointing at him, but her tone wasn't accusing. It was curious, almost protective. "What's your name?" Sam swallowed, his voice hoarse but steady. "Samuel Carter, ma'am. Just trying to catch my bus." The woman nodded, her eyes flicking to Holt, then the officers, then the crowd. She stepped forward, her boots clacking again, and the crowd parted like the Red Sea. Holt cleared his throat, his charm returning. "Councilwoman Reeves, this is just a minor disturbance. No need for—" She cut him off with a raised hand, her eyes narrowing. I'll decide what's needed, Derek. The crowd hushed, sensing a shift. Sam's chest tightened, not with fear this time, but with a flicker of hope. He didn't know what Reeves would do, but her presence felt like a lifeline in a storm. The teenage girl, still clutching her phone, shouted, "Show him the video!" The crowd murmured in agreement, their voices rising again. Reeves turned to her, nodding. "Let's see it," she said simply. The girl hesitated, then stepped forward, her hands shaking as she tapped her screen. The officers exchanged uneasy glances, and Holt's face darkened. Sam stood still, his cane grounding him, his eyes locked on Reeves. Whatever came next, he knew it would change everything. We're on the edge of the climax. What happens next will turn everything upside down. You can't miss the resolution of this story. The midday sun hung high over Jefferson Avenue, its glare reflecting off the cracked pavement and the sea of faces pressed close around Samuel Sam Carter. The air was thick with the scent of hot asphalt and the faint tang of coffee from a nearby diner, but the real heat came from the crowd's restless energy. Sam stood tall despite the ache in his knees, his weathered hand gripping his cane, the dog tag, Jimmy's dog tag, glinting against his chest like a quiet talisman. Councilwoman Reeves's commanding presence held the scene in a tense hush, her sharp eyes fixed on the teenage girl's phone as the video began to play. The crowd leaned in, their breaths shallow, phones raised to capture the moment. Sam's heart thudded, a mix of dread and hope swirling in his chest. This was it, the truth or another dismissal. The grainy footage filled the silence, the bus driver's voice crackling through the phone's speaker. "Keep moving, old man. This ain't your stop!" The crowd gasped, murmurs rippling like a stone dropped in water. The video showed Sam's raised hand, the bus speeding off, and the driver's fleeting smirk. Then Holt's voice, smooth and accusing, echoed from the clip. "This man's a known agitator." Sam's jaw tightened, the lie stinging anew. He glanced at Councilman Derek Holt, whose polished facade was cracking, his lips pressed into a thin line. The officers flanking him shifted uneasily, their hands no longer on their belts. Reeves's face remained unreadable, but her eyes burned with focus as the video ended. The teenage girl, her hoodie slipping back to reveal a fierce expression, thrust her phone higher. "That's what happened," she shouted, her voice raw. "He didn't do nothing wrong." The crowd erupted, their voices a chorus of outrage. "Shame on you!" cried the older woman with the grocery bag, her finger jabbing toward Holt. A construction worker, his vest streaked with dust, bellowed, "You can't treat a vet like that!" The words crashed over Sam like a wave, warming the cold knot of shame in his chest. For years he'd swallowed slights at the VA and stores, even from neighbors who saw only an old man, not a hero. But now this crowd, strangers bound by a shared sense of wrong, was his shield. Reeves raised a hand, silencing the crowd with a single gesture. "Mr. Carter," she said, her voice steady but resonant like a judge delivering a verdict. "Step forward." Sam hesitated, his cane tapping the pavement as he moved closer. His hazel eyes met hers, searching for judgment but finding something else. Respect, maybe even understanding. "Tell me your story," she said, softer now but loud enough for the crowd to hear. Sam's throat tightened, memories flooding back. Jungle heat, Jimmy's laughter, the weight of a war that never truly ended. He cleared his throat, his southern drawl steady despite the tremor in his hands. "Ma'am, I'm just a man trying to get to the VA for my checkup," he began, his voice low but firm. "I helped a lady with her stroller, waited for my bus, and that driver, he looked right at me and drove off." "Then this man," he nodded toward Holt, "called me an agitator. I ain't never caused trouble in my life. I fought for this country, lost friends for it, and all I wanted was a ride." His words hung heavy, each one a stone laid at the feet of his accusers. The crowd was silent, their eyes locked on him. A woman in the back wiped a tear, her hand trembling. Reeves turned to Holt, her expression hardening. "Councilman, you care to explain why a veteran's being slandered on my watch?" Holt's charm faltered, his hand smoothing his tie as he scrambled for words. "This is a misunderstanding," he said, his voice too smooth, like oil on water. "Mr. Carter's known for complaints about city services. I was protecting the public." The crowd booed, drowning him out. Reeves' eyes narrowed. "Protecting," she snapped. "By threatening an innocent man? By demanding that girl's phone?" She gestured to the teenager who stood defiant, her video now viral on the screens around her. The taller officer stepped forward, his face flushed. "Ma'am, we were just following orders," he said, glancing at Holt. Reeves' gaze flicked to him, sharp as a blade. "Orders to harass a veteran? You'll answer for that." She pulled out her phone, her fingers flying across the screen. "I'm suspending Route 47, effective immediately, pending a full investigation into this driver and your involvement, Derek." The crowd roared, a mix of cheers and gasps. Holt's face drained of color, his mouth opening, but no words came. Sam blinked, the weight of her words sinking in. Suspended? For him? But the moment wasn't over. Reeves turned to Sam, her stern facade softening. Mr. Carter, this city owes you an apology, she said, loud enough for all to hear. She stepped closer, extending her hand. Sam took it, her grip firm, grounding. You served us once, she continued. Today you reminded us what service means. She reached into her blazer, pulling out a small city pin, a gold star encircled by laurel leaves. This is for you, she said, pinning it to Sam's jacket. The crowd erupted in applause, their cheers echoing down the avenue. The teenage girl whooped, her phone still raised, capturing the moment. The older woman clapped, tears streaming down her face. Sam's chest swelled, not with pride, but with something deeper. Relief, vindication, a sense of being seen. His fingers brushed the pin, then the dog tag, a silent nod to Jimmy. You be proud, brother, he whispered. His eyes stung, but he blinked it away, standing taller despite the ache in his knees. The crowd surged around him, some shaking his hand, others patting his shoulder. The construction worker grinned, saying, You showed him, Pops. The teenage girl, now at his side, held up her phone. This is blowing up online, she said, her eyes bright. You're a hero. Holt slunk toward his SUV, the officers trailing him, their heads low. Reeves watched them go, her expression unyielding. She turned back to Sam, her voice quieter now. I'll personally ensure you get to the VA today, she said. And we're reviewing every complaint about this route. This won't happen again. Sam nodded, words failing him. For the first time in years, he felt the weight of invisibility lift, replaced by the warmth of a community that had fought for him. As Reeves guided him toward a city car, the crowd chanted his name. Carter! Carter! Their voices a powerful chorus. Sam paused, looking back at the bus stop, the place where it all began. He saw Jimmy's face in his mind, young and laughing, and felt a peace he hadn't known in decades. This wasn't just his victory, it was theirs. The car door closed, and Jefferson Avenue faded behind him. But the pin on his jacket and the dog tag at his heart carried the weight of a promise kept. Sam Carter, veteran, hero, was no longer just a name on a tag. He was a man reborn in the eyes of a city that finally saw him.